Hey ladies, I'm not with you guys right now because by the time this is shown, I will have a baby boy on the outside of my belly. Sarah reached out to me because the chapter that you're going through right now is about Thanksgiving and giving thanks and giving praise. And she's heard a good chunk of my testimony before, just speaking with the youth girls, and giving thanks is a discipline that I'm currently continually trying to master. And so she just asked me to share a little bit of my testimony with you guys. The Bible talks about giving thanks and giving praise hundreds of times throughout God's Word, and pretty much every time it always adds in everything or always. And those are words that I'm a word person, I'm a word nerd, and those are words that you can't ignore. You can't see that and think, oh, okay, so I can just do it a little bit, or I can just do it every now and then. It's clearly says in everything give thanks, and that's when it's hard. That's when it becomes more of a okay, so even when it hurts, even when I'm hurting, I'm supposed to be giving thanks. Even when it's painful, even when I don't see anything worth giving thanks for, I'm supposed to give thanks. 2 years ago, God took me through a season of darkness, and it's something I'm climbing my way out of. I haven't even completely conquered that darkness. But he moved us, my family, from Tennessee, which was our dream location, and church and family and friends and community, everything. And he put us into Kentucky, and Kentucky was the exact opposite of Tennessee. I've never been so lonely. I've never been so hurt and just confused on what was God doing. Why did God move us here? And I wish I could say that I gave thanks through it all and I made it joyfully the entire 10 months that we were there, but I didn't. And that's when the whole idea of giving thanks became an action for me. It became more of a, okay, Lauren, give thanks right now. When you're so lonely, when you have nobody else to turn to, give thanks right now. When you can't even worship in the church that God's called your husband to work in, give thanks right now. And there's a book that was written by Ann Voskamp. It's called 1,000 Gifts, and I've started it and stopped it and started it and stopped it multiple times in the past couple of years. But it wasn't until we moved to Kentucky that for some reason I picked it up. I was like, you know what, I'm going to read this. I'm going to stick to it and finish it all the way through. And her book is basically giving thanks even when it's hard, and just having it something click in your brain to where it starts as a discipline where you're angry, but you just start spouting off things to be thankful for just because you're supposed to, and you just do it out of discipline, out of kind of gritting your teeth. I'm thankful for this. I'm thankful for this. Okay, I did it. But what's crazy is how it slowly becomes a natural expression, and it slowly becomes an overflow of your heart. Through reading her book, I kept coming across this word, and you may have heard it before. It's called Eucharisteo. Eucharisteo. It's a beautiful Greek word that means thanksgiving, the act of giving thanks. And I don't know if you may have noticed, it's actually what is tattooed onto my wrist. And it's something that if I could tattoo like the inside of my eyelids, where every time I close my eyes, I see that word, that's that's where I would have put it. Second place I would have put it is my forehead backwards, so every time I look in the mirror I see it. But obviously those two aren't options, so I went with the third option, my wrist, on the hand that I'm most dominant on, the hand that I use the most. And it's a Greek word that it means thanksgiving, the act of giving thanks. In it is the word charis, charis, which is the Greek word for grace. And in that is the root word chara, chara, which is the Greek word for joy. And there's a quote in Ann Voskamp's book that just blew me out of the water, because in my dark season, in any of our dark seasons, we yearn for joy. We yearn to be out of this yuck and to be filled with joy. And what's crazy is we don't even realize that we are the ones that can choose that joy. We have that ability to choose that joy even in the middle of the darkness. And this quote that Ann Voskamp said is, "The height of my joy is dependent on the depth of my thanks." And that really got to me. It still speaks to me, because it's a challenge. Okay, if I want the joy way up here, how deep am I going with my thanks? And she started her own joy journal, and that's something that I started myself, and it's something that our youth girls here, they have their own joy journals going, and it really is just jotting down things to be thankful for, things that bring you joy, just to bring your mind back to what's important and back to the blessings that you have been given, even when things aren't going your way, even when your husband is driving you crazy, even when your marriage feels like it's falling apart. There's always something to be thankful for. And every time I look at my wrist and every time I see Eucharisteo, I try to spout off 3 things to be thankful for right then. And it can be something as silly as hardwood floors and open windows, or it can be something as intense as grace, intense as mercy and forgiveness and love. The cool, crazy part about what happens when you set your mind on those things that bring you joy is that it changes you, if you allow it. It changes your heart. It changes your perspective. It no longer is, why is this happening to me, God? I'm so upset. It's, okay, this is happening. In this, I can still thank you. I can still acknowledge that you were in control and that you have given me these blessings, and that it's going to be okay, that you still have authority over what is happening tomorrow, what is happening the next day and the next week and the next year. So right now, what I can do is thank you, is thank God. Thank you for waking me up today. Thank you for my children. Thank you for my husband. Thank you for a house and clothes and food, and that's what I can do. That's something that I can do. I can't change my circumstances. I'm not God, but I can acknowledge that He is, that He's in control, that He's going to work everything out for His good and His glory, and that I'm not alone, that He's got me. And so during whatever dark moments that we go through, because we will go through them, and the one that I went through isn't the last one, it wasn't the first one, we will go through them, but to remember and to master this discipline of giving thanks makes those dark seasons a little more bearable. And my hope is that the next dark season that I go through, because of what God taught me through this past one, my hope is that I can conquer it with a little more grace and conquer it with a little more joy, that my children, as they grow up, they just know that Mama is the weird one that constantly talks about, all right, let's choose our joy. Let's just spout off things we're thankful for. Let's just, woohoo, give thanks, give thanks, give thanks. And I want to be that weird one. I want to be that crazy, youth pastor wife that is constantly just like, you know what, this hurts and this stinks, but let's give joy. So all of that to say, again, I guess I'll just end with the quote from Ian Voskamp. No matter what season you're going through, the yearning you to have joy, especially in our marriages, because those are the most intimate relationships that we have here on earth. We yearn for a joyful marriage. We yearn for it to be something that brings us joy. And that joy comes from Christ, and that height of that joy is dependent on our depth of how much we are giving thanks for what God has already given us. Thank you, guys.